Hi, my name is Rabbi Michael Rovinsky, and I'm the director of the St. Louis Jewish Student Union. Anxious, fearful, worrisome, lonely, overwhelmed are but a few of the many emotions that so many of us are feeling at this terrible time. I'd like to take a few moments to share with you some psychological insights based on the Torah that can help us not only cope, but actually grow through these difficult times. King Solomon says in the book of Proverbs, Ashrei Adam mefached tamid. Praiseworthy is the person who is mefached always. The word mefached is often mistranslated just as fearful, afraid. However, Rashi in the Tractate of Gittin explains as follows. He says the word mefached means to be concerned about the things that we can control, to be worried about the impact of our words and our actions, whether that impact is intended or unintended. In other words, according to Rashi, King Solomon is teaching us that anxiety, mild anxiety, is beneficial. It reminds us that what we do and what we say matters. It has impact. This type of anxiety can be very helpful. However, if the anxiety is paralyzing, in other words, it impacts our daily living, we're not able to function, then that is not what King Solomon is talking about, and that is a level of anxiety that one should seek professional guidance to work with. There's another interesting verse that King Solomon says, Da'aga b'lev ish yashchena, which means that if a person has worry on his heart, yashchena. Now the word yashchena is a very difficult word to translate. The Pele Yoetz gives two explanations for the word yashchena. The first is yisichena midaito, to remove the worry from one's mind. Think about other things. The other explanation he gives is yisichena la'acherim, to speak it over with another person. In other words, King Solomon is telling us that if we have these intrusive thoughts, we should try to remove them from our mind if possible. But if not, we should speak it over with a trusted friend or perhaps a therapist. JSU is about the youth, so I'd like to share with you a couple of ideas in how this pandemic may be impacting our youth. It's important to remember that people express their anxiety in many different ways, especially children. So you may have a child, for example, that is very outgoing, very independent, well-behaved, and all of a sudden, this child is needy, is clingy, isn't listening, perhaps throwing tantrums. Don't panic. It's okay. Perhaps the child is simply trying to cope and deal with their anxiety with the limited tools that they have. So we, as parents, have the opportunity to teach our children new coping strategies. Sit down with your child. Ask them about their feelings, their concerns, their fears. Reflect back to the child what you are hearing them say. You don't have to have all the answers. You just have to show them that they are loved and supported. So we as parents have a great opportunity to teach our children additional coping strategies during this time. The Torah tells us in the book of Deuteronomy, V'dibarta bam, you should speak in them, referring to words of Torah, V'shivtecha b'veisecha, when you are sitting in your home, U'v'lechtecha v'derech, and when you are traveling along the way. Simply understood, this means that there's an obligation to teach our children about Judaism, to teach them Torah when we are at home, and as well as when we're not at home. However, I heard a beautiful insight from Rabbi Rothwax, and he says the words B'shivtecha b'veisecha means that we are teaching our children when we are sitting at home, not just Torah, but everything about life. How are we coping with our anxiety? The way we cope is the way we're teaching our children. So it would be phenomenal, I would suggest, that if we're feeling a little anxious, a little overwhelmed, don't hide it. Talk out loud, narrate your feelings, and say, Johnny, I'm feeling a little anxious right now or a little overwhelmed. I'm going to go take a break and chill for 10 minutes. Deep breathing is a very wonderful tool to work through anxiety, perhaps a panic attack, and say, I'm feeling a little anxious right now. I'm going to go sit down and do some deep breathing. Why don't you come and join me? Great opportunities we have. In fact, maybe this is one of the beautiful silver linings, because what has happened? God has taken us and promoted us, if you will, from not just being parents, but now we are the educators of our children 24/7. The other area that I'd like to share with you an idea is in the area of rules and regulations. It's very important when raising children that there is structure and rules in a home. However, these are not normal times. And while I do agree that there needs to be structure and rules, I also would humbly like to suggest that we don't have to be so particular that everything gets followed. We don't have to be midakdek. We don't have to be exacting in the way we enforce the rules, the curfews, every screen time, everything else that we normally would do in a normal period of time. The great sage, Rav Ada bar Abba, lived a very long life. And his students, towards the end of his life, asked him, Bameh ha'arachta yomim, how did you manage to live so long? Why were you so blessed by God to live such a long life? And he answered with the following words, Miyomai lo hikpadati betoch besi. In my entire life, I was never exact and demanding in my home. In today's vernacular, Rav Ada was saying, I was chill. Not every rule was followed. Everything didn't go the way I always wanted it, but I never lost it. I never got upset. I dealt with it. This is a great opportunity to work on ourselves and teach this wonderful quality to our children. There is so much more to share, but time is short. So I'd like to just end with one idea that I think is probably the most important takeaway, and that is in deepening and developing the relationship that we have with God. You may find this surprising, but Judaism does not believe that the essence of Jewish life is the synagogue. The synagogue's important. There's certain things we can't do outside synagogue prayer. The synagogue is critical to Jewish life. But the most important aspect of Jewish life, the essence, revolves around the Jewish home. God tells us, V'asu li mikdash, create for me a sanctuary, a tabernacle. Yes, that refers to the tabernacle that was built in the desert, to our holy temple in Jerusalem. But it also refers to the Jewish home. We have an obligation, a responsibility to create a home that is worthy of the resting of God's presence. We've lost the ability to pray in the synagogue, but we haven't lost our ability to pray. Prayer is a dialogue. It's a conversation. It's about deepening that relationship, that bond that we as God's children have with Him, our Father in heaven. And He wants that relationship. We have such an opportunity right now. Find a space in your home, a corner perhaps. Transform that corner into holy space and use it to approach God in prayer. Pour out your heart. Share your feelings, your dreams, your aspirations. If you have a prayer book, use that. But if you don't, that's okay too. Pray from the heart. Deepen that bond, that relationship that you have with God. If we're able to do that, not only are we modeling for our children what it means to have a strong relationship with God, but we're giving ourselves strength. We're giving ourselves the ability to dig deep and cope with the stressors, the anxiety, and anything else that this terrible pandemic throws our way. We can view this pandemic for all the pain and suffering that it has caused, or we can recognize that, but view this pandemic as an opportunity for tremendous growth. The Torah and modern psychology tells us our emotions are the result of what we are thinking. I'd like to suggest and end with this idea that if we can use this pandemic as a way to grow and develop and become better people, become better Jews, not only will we walk away from this when it's over with God's help soon as better people, but our families, our communities, our country, and with God's help, the entire world will be transformed. Because the last thing we want is to go back to normal. If we go back to normal, we've missed the opportunity. Let's not be normal. Let's take what we've learned and become the greatest people we are each capable of becoming. Thank you, stay healthy, and thank you for listening. I welcome any and all feedback.